She-Hulk Season 1. Well, it wasn't very good.
Well, let's hope it's not just Season 1, but it's series.
Yeah, I really hope that was it. It hasn't been picked up yet. No renewal on this one, and I really hope that it stays that way, because this was really bad. I mean, we start out with Jen Walters, and she is the cousin of Bruce Banner. And they're in a car accident. In this accident, they're both injured. He's bleeding, she's got a cut, and his blood gets into her cut, and she turns into a Hulk. This is not the way that it went in the comics, from what I understand. I guess in the comics, she was dying and he gave her a blood transfusion to save her life. So this was different. I'm not sure why they made this change. Maybe they couldn't have him saving her life for reasons. But I didn't really care for this version. I would have preferred the other version, personally.
We're to assume that if somebody gets hurt around Bruce Banner and gets a cut, and then he gets a cut, that he can just keep making Hulks accidentally just by cutting himself shaving.
Well, I mean, I wonder if part of what came into play there was that they're genetically related. So maybe there was some sort of genetic predisposition that she also had that allowed this to happen. But yeah, I was thinking that same thing. I mean, is this spread like a bloodborne disease?
The transfusion in the comics, I suppose, makes a little bit more sense. But I would rather have gone with that. I can suspend my disbelief for that.
Yeah.
But I still argue that the way they showed this here, if he cuts himself shaving and gets that blood on somebody else who has an open cut, that person is going to be a Hulk. I just don't.
Well, it's kind of like spreading AIDS.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I guess it just brings up the question, any ladies that Bruce Banner gets with, do they need to go get tested for becoming a Hulk? I mean, I hate to be crude there, but it does bring up questions like that.
Is it just his blood or any bodily fluids?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a comic thing, and I've said in our videos that, at least for me, I'm not a comic person. I didn't read the comics. So I just go with what's presented on screen. And that origin of her on screen in this Disney series, it was hard for me to accept and not make jokes galore on the thing.
Yeah, so she's got her powers, and Bruce is trying to help her figure out how to control her anger so she doesn't just go turning into a Hulk willy-nilly and going on a rampage. And she wants nothing to do with that. She seems to think that because she's a woman, she already has mastered keeping control of anger. I'm just going to say this. As a woman, no, you haven't. Clearly she hadn't, because at the end of the season, we find out, nope, she hadn't.
That's the thing, too, is I've seen many people online saying, well, there goes Disney again, showing that this She-Hulk is just so much better than the male Bruce Banner Hulk. But that first episode, she wasn't. Bruce was trying to show her that she's not calm, she's not in that good place, and she was showing him that he was right. When they were doing those feats of strength, you know, the yoga that they were doing, she was doing better when you look at it because she was trying to do the physical moves and not actually take advantage of the censoring that the yoga was supposed to be doing for her.
Yeah.
And then even that rock throwing thing, people have said, well, that shows she could throw a rock further. It's like, no, because like after that whole exchange happened, then he got mad and he picked up the rock and like threw it into the sun or whatever.
Yeah, he launched it into space. That was awesome.
So he was still stronger than her. And then when she was clapping her hands, like he clapped his hands to knock her down. And then like she went nuts and started knocking him around. The point being is he did that carefully because he knew how much damage that he could do with that clap. And she was just screwing around clapping her hands. So I interpret that whole training, I'm going to call it like a training montage. I interpret that differently than a lot of the people on YouTube because I don't think that showed that she was better than Bruce. It showed quite the opposite. That she wasn't doing anything as well as Bruce was.
No.
The only benefit she had is she could control whether she was in Hulk form or human form. But that was it. That was the only thing she did better than Bruce.
Yeah. He was trying to show her how to deal with her new powers, how to control them so that she didn't hurt people. And he was going easy on her, and she was going at him like full tilt. She wrecked the little bar that he had built there on the beach. She was incredibly irresponsible. Honestly, he never should have let her leave like that.
She's a danger to the temperament that she has. She's a danger to the people around her.
She didn't take it seriously.
She was not, to take a line from another franchise, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yep.
And her explanation for this is, well, I don't want to be a superhero anyway.
Yeah.
But she was walking around basically all roided up. It would be easy for her to accidentally hurt somebody. And she didn't care about that.
No, and she had zero interest in using her powers to help people. She just wanted to go back to her life and just be an attorney and hunt for men.
That was the thing, too. What they showed on screen, she was not a very good lawyer.
No.
I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just my tilt on the whole thing. But when you look at the cases that she had, she didn't seem to know what she was doing through most of those.
Well, from what I understand, one of the interviews that I read, they wanted to actually make this a legal procedural show, but then they realized they didn't know anything about the law. So instead of getting an expert to help them write this, instead they're just like, we'll just, discount all that stuff and write this other crap. Again, I would just say, if they were turning this in class, I was their instructor, I would be like, what the hell is this? You didn't do the assignment. You fail. Research. You have to do your research. You got to do your homework. And you didn't. Why? They kept saying they wanted this to be like Ally McBeal meets, what was that?
I don't know,
something else.
They said there were two or three things they were trying to make this that.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so if you want to remake Ally McBeal, why don't you just remake Ally McBeal instead of doing this? Like, this was horrible. Jen was a selfish person all the way through the show. Even at the end, she didn't like the way the finale was going, so what does she do? She pulls a Karen and marches to the manager's office. This show was awful. The only good things about this show were the guest characters. And even they oftentimes were neutered, like what they did to Daredevil. Daredevil and the Walk of Shame was just cringy.
I don't know why they were promoting Jen as a stereotype of just looking for a man, whether it was a booty call or for something more serious, because they kept kind of going back and forth. Is she looking for a serious relationship or is she looking just for a booty call?
Oh, I think she was looking for anything she could get. It was pathetic. She was pathetic. She was insecure, even though she seemed to think she was some sort of strong woman. Her entire life was defined by finding a man. What is wrong with this picture?
And this was supposed to be, at least they were advertising it, as this was an empowering show for women. I'm not a woman, but I don't think I would want anybody that I have any sort of, friendship with to say, yeah, do what she's doing. I wouldn't want you to behave like Jen's doing. I don't see how this empowers women at all.
No, she was an insecure, selfish narcissist. Everything was always about her. Always. I don't understand why anybody would think this was good, because it was not. As far as how this was a representation of women, she was a horrible person. Like, not just woman, horrible person. I don't want this. This isn't representing me. This doesn't represent women in a good light. And this was written by a woman, allegedly. Seriously? I am fed up with this crap. This is garbage. But I must be some sort of horrible sexist to say that.
In our last video, we compared a small piece of what was happening in Superman and Lois with Clark and his son. Mm-hmm. His son was getting his powers finally through, I guess he had puberty and they just started. And this show, comparing Jen getting her abilities, yes, occasionally Jordan didn't listen to his dad, but then there were consequences to that. It wasn't like, oh, Jordan figured it out on his own. When he wasn't doing well, his dad had to say, this is why this didn't work, or you got to watch your anger because I have that same anger in me. And if I even forget for 1 second that I'm Superman, I can hurt lots of people on accident. That was actually a speech that he gave to his son in one of the episodes.
Yeah.
To try to tell his son how important this was. And his son actually listened. Bruce gave a similar speech to Jen.
Yeah.
About how she has to be careful. And unlike Jordan, who did finally listen and go, yeah, you're right, Dad, I gotta be careful, Jen didn't care. If the episode where Daredevil was introduced, she threw a car at him.
Yeah. Somebody's car. So, she's destroying other people's property. She could have hurt a lot of people by doing that. And just no cognizance of what she is doing as far as the possible consequences, how many people could get hurt, what kind of property damage. They would have been right to lock her up for the protection of society because she was a menace. There were some good parts of this show. For instance, the Abomination. The Abomination was awesome. I'm sure people probably would be like, that was a bastardization of the original, but I thought it was actually clever and funny. I mean, he was in jail and he had all these women who were apparently, I guess, pen pals. And they
formed a cult around him.
Yeah.
And
God.
It was funny, at least initially. It was funny because he created this cult and these women were they giving him money or something? And then when he got out of prison, he got on a bus and just drove away from them and they're
just left him there.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was so funny. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably they were trying to say something not nice about him, I suppose.
Or men in general.
Yeah, but it was funny. I mean, this guy, they were writing to this guy in prison, the Abomination. What did they think was going to happen? And I think that goes right back to Jen, though. It's like, Jen, you're not being careful here in selecting your partners. What did you think was going to happen? At least it was entertaining watching the Abomination and his antics. Even Wong was brought into this. I think it says a lot about the actors who played the Abomination and Wong that they were able to
go with the material that was written.
Yes.
And make the most of it.
Yes, they were able to elevate what they were given.
Because that witness that was drunk at a party that Wong initially he didn't get along with, but then he sort of they ended up watching a movie or TV or something together.
Yeah, they seemed to form a bond.
And he was able to tolerate her. So the actor took that stuff and said, I'm going to make the most of it. And that was also entertaining. I'm glad it didn't drag on longer than it did, but it made me laugh. This thing was supposed to be a comedy of sorts.
Yeah.
And the Abomination and the Wong stuff made me laugh. That's the only stuff in this whole series that made me laugh as far as the comedic part of it.
Some of that stuff with Mr. Immortal and his wives made me laugh. But again, from what I understand, this was a bastardization of what the original Mr. Immortal character actually was. So I can see how people would be upset by that. However, I thought his antics were funny. Probably not supposed to. We probably were supposed to think this guy was a big piece of shit, but I thought it was hilarious. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else in there that it just made me laugh. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it was shitting on men, but these characters were, I guess, more clever than Jen was. So what does that say about her if they were trying to make these male characters look bad, that they were basically running rings around her?
And the thing with the series is, for all of the series but the last episode, I was neutral on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it, but I've seen worse.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went along with it and said, well, this will be forgettable. I mean, once it's done, it'll be done. But that last episode, oh my gosh, I now can say this is a horrible series based specifically on what they did in that last episode.
Yeah. Basically where they shit on anybody who said that they didn't like the show. Yeah.
The enemy was a group of online trolls that run a website.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous, and I don't mean ridiculous as in funny. Like Doom Patrol, there's some ridiculous stuff in there that makes me laugh. But that's on purpose.
Yeah.
What they did with these, I even hate to use the term, but these incels that had this website and these group meetings that they were meeting up with, it was horrible. I've never, ever seen somebody overtly go after the fans. Star Trek Discovery craps on Star Trek fans, but they don't do it directly in the narrative. It's just kind of like a subtext that's going on. But like in the lines of this last She-Hulk episode, in narrative, in script, they were crapping on the people who would probably be watching a series like this. I do not understand how these businesses can stay in business crapping on their own customers.
I don't know.
I don't understand, because if you're telling these guys not to watch your show, who's going to watch it? We've already established this isn't a good show for women to watch.
Nope.
So who watches it?
I don't know. I'm going to say nobody watches this.
I do not understand what a lot of these Hollywood companies are doing right now, because it seems like all they're doing is it's like they're in a contest to see who can put the crappier product out there.
Who can insult the fans the most before they run away?
It really is like they're trying to destroy these franchises. Maybe the solution is, what they're thinking anyway, is if they destroy the pre-established franchises, then when they build their new ones, they'll only be building over rubble. So, hey, I don't have to compete with the Hulk because I've destroyed that. Or I don't have to compete with the next generation of Star Trek because I destroyed that. That's the only thing that makes sense to me on why they're doing what they're doing. Because I do not understand why a company would go out of their way to attack the people who buy their product. Does capitalism not work in this situation? You have a product, you're selling it, you want to sell it to your customers so they buy it. I don't understand. That's not how business works. That's not how any of this works.
It's weirdly, I'm just going to call this the gentrification of our culture. Like, they go in, they take over an area where you've got just regular old people who are fans of something, and they take and dress it up to be something else, and they chase out the original fans, thinking that they're going to get these elitist snobs to come in there and be fans of this new thing to replace the old fans. So the problem for them is that those people aren't showing up. Those people don't watch the show. They don't buy merchandise. So they've just destroyed their franchise for no reason whatsoever.
I don't know how these series stay afloat. I mean, I don't want to divert too much to Star Trek, but the Star Trek Discovery has destroyed Star Trek. So has Star Trek Picard.
Yeah.
And the part that gets me, Picard, I might understand a little bit because they have older actors. But when Star Trek Discovery first began, the first couple of seasons, it was rumored that each episode cost $8 to $10 million a piece.
Yep.
Where was that money going? It wasn't on the writing. You could say maybe Jason Isaacs and Michelle Yeoh, but really they were pulling in $8 million an episode.
It was lens flares.
Well, but that doesn't cost that much to make. That's done with their desktop, visual effects software.
It's special diamond encrusted lens flares.
Well, it just makes me think that companies like Bad Robot are just pocketing this money.
Oh yeah, I bet
and just
they are.
Spending the bare minimum.
Yeah,
because even what they film looks cheap. The first couple of seasons of Discovery, I mean, I suppose it looked better than it does now. It kind of had a smoky look to it, but then they were tilting the camera all over. But you look at last season of Star Trek Discovery, and that looks like that was shot by an iPhone in somebody's backyard.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I mean, maybe I'm not remembering this right, but I thought a bunch of the Expanse sets were sold to the Star Trek Discovery people.
No, they were going to. And when they weren't sure if the Expanse was going to continue, the rumor was that Discovery people were trying to get a hold of it. But when Amazon picked it up, they kept the sets.
Oh, okay.
So now that the Expanse I don't think is technically, Amazon's done with them. Mm-hmm. But that company that makes, was it Elcon? That makes the Expanse, I think they're still trying to ship this around to some place to see if they can get more made. Which is funny. Again, side tangent. I do not understand why Amazon would spend all this money to make Lord of the Rings, their prequel, which was, for the longest time, they've been trying to be the next Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. The Expanse was Game of Thrones in space. Mm-hmm. I realized that it didn't get nearly the marketing like Game of Thrones and now Lord of the Rings gets, but the Expanse they had that, and they got rid of it. And they got rid of that for this Lord of the Rings, which I don't know what they're doing there. I'll be honest, I did not watch any episodes. I listened to some reviewers. They said it was bad. It was the same modern sensibilities that we're complaining now with Star Trek Discovery and loads of other franchises, and I wasn't going to touch it.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand, I guess, bring us back to Disney and She-Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand what they're doing. The last few series that they've had have been stuff I haven't wanted to watch. Because this was the first series I've watched in a while. I did not watch the Loki series.
No. Oh,
I did not watch WandaVision, although I heard WandaVision, at least for a half of it, was interesting in trying to figure out what they were doing. But then the ending was essentially, hey, I'm going to screw with this town, and I'm going to be called stunning and brave for doing so.
I'm really glad now that we didn't watch it.
Yeah, after hearing about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Disney's doing. Who is watching this stuff? It's bad. I have no want to watch this stuff.
No.
It's kind of like with, our previous video, the CW superheroes that were on the CW, the DC stuff. I tried those. I didn't really care for them because they were not really, I don't think they were meant for somebody of my age group. But then Superman and Lois came around, and they separated themselves from that Arrowverse, at least enough in the multiverse where I could take that on its own merit. And DC right now, between Superman and Lois, what they did, and it looks like under new management what DC is going to be going through, that maybe DC is going to be the comic power right now that's going to take the market away from Marvel. And I never would have thought that, because Marvel, in the phase 1 and phase 2 of their cinematic universe, looked unstoppable, and DC was just so far behind and crapping the bed.
Yep.
I don't understand what these companies are doing. I really don't. But She-Hulk was an example of, I don't know why Disney's still making stuff. I really don't.
The only good Disney thing I've seen recently was, what was that, Jedi? Was it called Jedi?
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi, yeah.
And the animated stuff as for Star Wars is actually good.
Oh, it was excellent. I probably shouldn't say too much here in case I make a video about it, but I actually enjoyed Tales of the Jedi so much more than a lot of the live action stuff they've had recently. So, I mean, Tales of the Jedi, totally worth watching.
Yeah, and this is something I don't understand, again, with Disney, and we'll go with Lucasfilm here. So, in their animated series, they created a great female character in Ahsoka. That's like the one live action Star Wars thing I'm looking forward to, is the Ahsoka series.
Yes.
And in Tales of the Jedi, I think that's what it was called, that dealt a lot with Ahsoka, at least the last 2 episodes did. I'm looking forward to Ahsoka. I probably shouldn't, because Disney's going to do something horrible with it probably, but there is a strong female character who kicks ass that I want to watch. Yeah. Why can't they make more characters like Ahsoka? I like Ahsoka like a whole bunch. That fight scene she had with Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, the last season of the Clone Wars, or second to last season, I forget which season it was, that was really, really good. Probably the best lightsaber scene I've seen live action or animated.
Yeah.
So they clearly can do good stuff with strong female characters like Ahsoka. But why can't they create, like Jen from the She-Hulk series, to bring this back to this series? Why can't they make good female characters at Disney? Why can't they do that?
Oh, I think they could. The question is, why won't they? That's what I want to know. So, why won't they? Anyone have any ideas about this? I've got a few, but I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, because you probably heard what I've said several times already in many, many videos. So yeah, why do you think Disney seems incapable of making decent female characters in these live action shows? Let me know.